On this episode, the Arduinos decided to be friends again, and we solved the scooter problem. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17 of DailyIoT. My name is Kevin, and good news all around on today's episode. I want to start a couple of episodes back. I announced that if you'd left a comment, I was going to pick a name at random, give away one of these. The winner of that drawing at random was Rud Dog. Congratulations. If you will send me an email to kevin@sidwar.com, I will put that in the mail to you and get it out to you. I'm happy to give these away. I'm going to do another giveaway at the end of the episode, so keep watching or just fast forward to see what the conditions are. I've got a little thing I thought was a pretty cool idea to give away another one of these. But before that, let's talk about news really quick. The big news this weekend coming out of Maker Faire, New York, where the Arduinos have decided to settle their differences and be friends again. So I don't want to rehash the whole history here. The short version of the story is Arduino was founded, like over a decade ago. A group of 5 people. There was some friction between a couple of them with the manufacturing arm and the software arm. They decided to part ways. Massimo was he was in charge of Arduino.cc, and then the other wing formed Arduino SRL. It was an Italian company that owned the trademark for everywhere in the world except for the United States, and Massimo with Arduino.cc owned the trademark for Arduino in the United States. And that's why if you go to the website, you'll have seen the Arduino and Genuino brands, the difference there. They couldn't use Arduino outside of the US. So anyway, they got up on stage at Maker Faire, New York City, and announced that they were settling their differences and rejoining. There's going to be a new Arduino Holdings, which will be the company that handles the distribution and interactions with all the manufacturing. And they're also starting the Arduino Foundation, which will be the open source project or community that will take care of the IDE side of it. And so, I get to throw in opinions on this because it's my show. So this, don't quote this as news. This is just my opinion at this point. I feel like Arduino CC really dominated during this short little break between the two. Massimo has really been the heart and soul of Arduino, and the software and things have really continued to develop under him on that side. Arduino SRL broke out with manufacturing, and there were tons of new boards like the Yun, I don't know how you pronounce it, and a couple of other things that, quite frankly, I didn't really think were that great. And so I don't know what the underlying thing is here. I think they both realized that probably airing your dirty laundry doesn't help the community at all, and everybody makes more money when everybody's cooperating. So glad to see it happening. Glad to see that that's all going to work itself out. Happy for Massimo. He's a great guy running the Arduino project. Just lots of good things. And so that's the Arduino news. They're getting back together and gonna, like I said, have Arduino Holdings and the Arduino Foundation. So good news. All right, the other super exciting piece of news is the scooter update. So we've had a couple of days to work on this, show some footage. I can't remember if it was all from today, if there was some from last week. But in any case, I'm going to flip us over to the scooter update.
Hey everyone, so the latest on the scooter and the work we're doing on that. So had this trouble with the motor getting kind of hot while we were running it. So we wanted to see what the voltages were doing as we were trying to run the motor, make sure we weren't overvolting it, undervolting it, something weird wasn't going on. So we wanted to compare what the voltages looked like on the normal controller board for the scooter and with our motor controller that we were replacing it with. So we used a multimeter, normal multimeter, to probe the voltage going to the motor on both boards, and we found that they were the same. Going forward, it would ramp up nicely to 24 volts, and going backwards, it would ramp into the negative voltage. There was no difference that we could see just using a multimeter between the two voltages. So a little bit of a dead end for the investigation of figuring out what's going wrong. So our next step is moving over to a different piece of equipment. Multimeters are great for getting simple voltages on certain parts of a circuit, but they're not great at time resolution. They can't see really small differences in signals. For that, flipping over to a scope. And the goal of using the scope is the fact that, it might blow some of your minds here, when a motor controller gives an output voltage to a motor, say 24 volts, it doesn't just give it a constant 24 volts. It's actually 24 volts and then not 24 volts and flipping that on and off really quickly. A multimeter can't see that quick difference, a scope can. So we're hoping that when we look at the signal with some more detail, we can see the difference that's going on here and figure out why our motor's getting too hot. So we'll cover that in some more detail in just a couple moments after we get some measurements. So the investigation of the scoping and of those lines that Kevin just showed you are really that wasn't the problem at all. Looking at those lines, they all came out just about the same in terms of what the pulses looked like that were driving the motors. So no issues discovered through that route. So we were sitting here with a couple of the coworkers talking about the issue and digging in to try to figure out why it wasn't working. And as it so happens, someone else walked into the room, asked a question about, hey, those two wires, maybe they do something more than it seems, and kicked us off down our next investigation on what is happening. So it turns out what is happening is that these two wires on the board, there's two little ones right here, if the motor is in drive position, so if it's ready to be driven, those two wires form a loop. So they form a continuous signal. We can check and see that a continuous signal passes through them. We thought that was it with that wire. However, what it actually does is it controls an extra relay that is on the motor that is controlling a brake on the motor. And at the same time, there's a relay on the controller board that will also trigger. So it turns out that the problem is that we were indeed fighting ourselves with this motor. We were having a brake engaged even when we were in drive position, so we thought, and we need to signal these relays to turn off that brake to no longer be fighting the brake so we can drive forward properly. And testing it tentatively, it looks like that will solve our problems. The motor won't heat up, it's not fighting a brake anymore, and we'll be all set to go. So next steps are getting a relay that we can control with the photon and that can switch 24 volts, which is what this relay operates on for the brake. And then we should finally be good to go with this scooter.
Okay, so that was all super interesting. In layman's terms, we were basically trying to drive this thing with the parking brake on, which, you know, sometimes you spend hours and hours on these problems and then find out that you've done something stupid like that. We assumed that the wire first we assumed the wire was an encoder so we could get the speed. Wrong. Then we said, oh, it's just a switch to know whether it's in gear or not, so that as a safety mechanism we can decide whether to drive the motor or not, whether it's engaged. Wrong. And then finally we're listening very closely. Somebody else comes in, completely external person, that's just like, have you guys thought about this? And we're like, I don't know. And turns out there's another relay. You can hear the click. I tried to highlight in the video there. And so driving with the parking brake on, I swear. Sometimes this stuff is so simple, but that means that the universe does make sense and there wasn't some completely alien foreign concept at play here that we just didn't know about. We weren't smart enough to figure it out earlier. So, but the good news is we're unblocked on that. We've got the motor controller hooked up, and so we should be able to move forward swapping that out and controlling the motor with a photon. So the other downside to all this is that it turns out that max speed of the scooter is actually max speed. They're not throttling that at all, so we will not get any forward speed gains out of this. They do throttle backwards, so we could conceivably get like twice as fast backward speed, but I don't know. So anyway, that's the update there. Okay, last thing of the day I wanted to cover real quick. I want to give away another one of these. Another project. Over the weekend, I decided I've been playing with this photon project and connecting things like a light sensor, temperature sensor, buzzer, and things like that. I finally decided I wanted to stick an external EEPROM on my breadboard. I needed to move some wires around. I rearranged some things. It's not my greatest piece of work, but the wires are pretty neat and clean. And so I messed with this for like 2 hours. The EEPROM was kind of sporadic. Like reads seemed to kind of be working and writes weren't working. And I went over the code in the data sheet like 10 times, couldn't figure it out. I finally figured it out. And so it's something that's not too complicated. I Again, I'm like on a roll here of like stupid things that I haven't been able to figure out quickly. Sometimes it happens. What are you going to do? And so I'm going to put a picture of the breadboard up in just a second. You can look at it, pause the video, see if you can figure out why the symptoms are. My EEPROM was sporadically not working. My temperature sensor analog reading, which I can circle it on the picture to show you what it is, wasn't giving me accurate readings, and things generally just weren't behaving nicely. And so I want to see if you can figure it out. The first person to email me what the problem was, kevin@sidwar.com. I will send off another one of these, trying to get rid of all of them. Love to get them into the hands of people out there. So go ahead and throw it up now. Okay, and that does it for this episode. I appreciate everybody watching. If you have any questions or feedback, as always, please stick them in the comments down below. But until next time, thanks for watching Daily IoT, the show where together we're learning all about the Internet of Things, one day at a time.